All right, all right. We are recording. I am recording here. I am live on IG. Welcome. Welcome back to the fourth edition of Mental Illness Isn't Real for Black People. Maybe. So I'm recording on IG. I'm live on IG, recording on this. I was doing them live on YouTube. I like doing them live actually, but I don't like the fact that I can't share the screen. I like to share my receipts and my credentials and all this information because I want you to see what I'm looking at. I've been studying all different aspects and elements of quote unquote mental illness for over 10 years now. I got so much, so much information. So I like to, put it on the screen or whatnot. But so I'm going to record on here from now on. But this is the fourth edition. As usual, I like to, um, you know, give credit where credit is due. First and foremost, Malidoma Somé, in particular, among many, he was one of the first individuals I came across on my journey that gave me a different lens and a different point of view regarding these elements, these variables, these different aspects of what they call in the modern Western world of psychiatry, mental illnesses. So I always like to start by giving a shout out to him. And second of all, or first of all, this is in conjunction with Normal LOL. That is my podcast. Over 100 and something episodes I've done over the past however many years. Haven't done any in a while. But that particular podcast platform also speaks in depth regarding indigenous and ancient ways and perspectives regarding the origins and different remedies and therapies as pertains to what they labeled modern, from a modern point of view, as mental illnesses. But why am I doing this series in particular? Am I trolling? Could be, maybe not. It's to get you to open your mind up, open your spirit up. What we do know for a fact is that when it comes to decolonizing words, phrases, labels, different perspectives and the essence of what makes a lot of us who we are, in decolonizing, you have to strip and dismantle and part ways with and break up. And so many things deserve to be decolonized, whether it's our perspectives on companionship, our perspectives on various types of relationships, our perspectives on education, our perspectives on dietary practices, our perspectives on spirituality. When it comes to physical and mental health, same thing. So I'm here to diagnose. I'm here to give a real, authentic diagnosis from a different perspective. So, with that being said, if you want to see what I'm looking at, you have to go to YouTube and watch it later on. Those that are already watching on YouTube, here we go. Mental illness isn't real for Black people. Maybe. On this one, let me just go rewind back a little bit. The first three live episodes were hinged on a really dope journal that was written. You can find it in ResearchGate. Very well put together too. Excuse me. It's called The Shaman and Schizophrenia Revisited. Again, The Shaman and Schizophrenia Revisited. The three people that put that together is Tanya Marie Lerman, John Doolin, and in particular, Vivian Afi Zokoto. Vivian Afi Sokoto. And they did such an excellent job. And just in short, it's an abstract, and this is kind of revisiting the different perspectives regarding different cultures and how they look at schizophrenia from a shamanic point of view. I'm not gonna go deep into it because you got to go and check out the other videos that I did over the past few weeks. But that's what I've been doing for however many years. I've been, giving you bits and pieces of different tribes and different elements of cultures that see these things from different perspectives. All right. Again, that's The Shaman and Schizophrenia Revisited. It's on ResearchGate. It's also on the National Institute of Health. website, but we're going to move forward from that. On this one, I want to dive into the origins of like the people and the words because I think that's important, right? I think that's very important. I think it's I don't think. I believe it's important because if I am to subscribe to something regarding how I view reality, how I view my existence, how I view the existence regarding those that surround me, I want to see people that look like me within, you know what I'm saying, within the culture of what's going on, within the culture of what's being established and presented to me. You know, it's kind of like the perspective, and I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't know if it's a quote or not or whatnot, but it's kind of like the perspective of like, you know, like black people, as it pertains to black people. Maybe it's black people in the Americas or melanated people. You know, we're not gonna get tied up in the semantics as far as colorization is concerned. I know we're indigenous. I know we're melanated. I know black is wrong, but we're going to use black just for the sake of the conversation and the dialogue. But the perspective that, again, it's just loosely translated, that black people are the only ones that would conceive of worshiping a God that doesn't even look like them. You know, that comes from back in the day, a lot of us, including myself, who were indoctrinated and conditioned to worship, go to church, and believe in this individual who has pink skin, white skin, ashy skin, whatever you want to say, and blue eyes and wavy hair. You know what I'm saying? What's that? A1, B, A3, B1 hair? It wasn't 4C, I can tell you that. It wasn't 4C in them pictures. So circling back around to like that perspective is like, you know, why, how was it able to happen that we would see so many different things and digest and absorb so many things from a culture or peoples that don't look anything like us, which leads me in transition and segueing into the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane. This is all part of the origins of the inception of the American Psychiatric Association, the inception of the WHO, the World Health Organization, the inception of, let me scroll up a little bit, the inception of the International Classification of Diseases. All these things are beginning, you know, in the early mid 1800s, and they start to kind of merge and come together around 1945, basically, right? So let's go back to the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane. And I will read, as this is a lecture. This is an abstract lecture, as I like to call them abstract lectures for various reasons. This particular organization, the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane, my God, that's long, also known as the Superintendents Association, was organized in Philadelphia in October 1844. All right, 1844. A meeting of 13 superintendents regarding this particular organization, making it the first professional medical specialty organization in the U.S. All right, this is prior to the DSMs. You know, do you remember what DSMs are? Diagnostic Statistical Manuals of Mental Disorders. Might be missing a word or two, but that's the DSMs. You got DSM 1 through DSM 6. Also, what coincides with DSMs is, as I just stated, the International Classification of Diseases. You have ICD-1. I think it goes all the way to ICD-11. It's a lot going on here, all right? Okay, let's go back to the association. So that's 1844. And let's just go ahead and dig into the original 13. Let's go straight to the original 13. Who are these individuals that are at the origins and the inceptions of these words, these classification of words that define altered states and mood disorders? I would say a lot differently than um, a lot of other cultures of people in different regions and parts of the world, different tribes. These 13. Again, you can see the pictures if you go on YouTube and watch this later. Let me read real quick about the original 13. At a meeting in 1844 in Philadelphia, 13 superintendents and organizers of insane asylums and hospitals formed the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane, AMSAII. The group included Thomas Kirkbride, creator of the Start over. The group included Thomas Kirkbride, creator of the asylum model, which was used throughout the United States. All right. Let's look at Thomas Kirkbride, because I know you want to see what he looks like, right? Just gotta see what he looks like. Thomas Kirkbride. There he goes. Of course, you're on IG. You can't see this. He looks like death. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Looks very concerning the way this guy looks. Thomas Kirkbride was born July 31st, 1809 on a farm in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, into a wealthy Orthodox Quaker family. We're going to stop right there. We're not going to go to all the background of these individuals because I don't really care to that degree. I care regarding my utilization of other information to present different perspectives in my case regarding these words and labels and stuff like that, classifications. But we're just going to keep it real simple. These are the 13. This is one of the original 13. He's Orthodox Quaker family, born in 1809, Pennsylvania. All right, let's go back. We got one down, 12 to go. Let me read this part right quick, and then we'll go to the other 12. It was chartered to focus primarily on the administration of hospitals and how they affected the care of patients as opposed to conducting research or promoting the profession. At the meeting, they passed the first proposition of the new organization. It is the unanimous sense of this convention that the attempt to abandon entirely the use of all means of personal restraint is not sanctioned by the true interests of the insane. I don't even know what that means. I'm going to read it one more time, though. At the meeting, they passed the first proposition of the new organization, in parentheses, quote unquote. It is the unanimous sense of this convention that the attempt to abandon entirely the use of all means of personal restraint is not sanctioned by the true interest of the insane. That's an interesting proposition. Maybe you can help me understand that a little more. Let's move on. The list of the original 13 members and their organizations provide a good index to well-established psychiatric institutions in the U.S. as of 1844. They included Thomas Kirkbride. That was the first one. Samuel B. Woodard of Worcester State Hospital, Massachusetts. Let's look at Samuel B. Woodard right quick. Again, got to go to the YouTube video later on to see a picture of him. He's not melanated. He is born in Torringford. I don't know where Torringford is. Where's Torringford? Torringford is Connecticut. It just says Torringford, but let's not. Yeah, I think it's Connecticut. Let's just assume that it's Connecticut for the moment. All right, let's keep going though. So he's born in Torringford, died in Northampton, and again, he doesn't look like that. Look like us. Superintendent of the Worcester Lunatic Asylum and co-founder and first president of the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, Isaac Ray. Isaac Ray, again, non-melanated. Was an American psychiatrist, one of the founders, also a native of Beverly, Massachusetts. And let's keep going. That's number 3. That's number 3 of the original 13. Luther V. Bell, again, not melanated. Luther is one of the 13 mental hospital superintendents, born in Francistown, New Hampshire. So that does actually make it a little more clear that Samuel B. Woodard was from Connecticut, because I think they're all around the same area. So Luther V. Bell, Somerville, Massachusetts. Not Somerville, but Massachusetts. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Charles H. Stedman, again, doesn't look like me or probably you, non-melanated. One of the original founders of the original 13. Born in Lancaster, Massachusetts. I don't know when he was born, but that's neither here nor there. Let's keep going. Number 6, John S. Butler. They do have a picture of John. No, they don't have a picture of John S. Butler. He's of Boston Lunatic Asylum and also of the Hartford Retreat in Connecticut. He's probably from Connecticut or Boston, Massachusetts. And I am 99% sure, 99.9% sure, he don't look like me or you either. That's number 6. Amariah Brigham. I wonder if he is part of the founder of Brigham University. Again, that's not important right now, but he was born in Massachusetts in 1798. He doesn't look nothing like me or anybody else that's melanated. Pliny Earl, he's popular actually. He's pretty renowned in the medical industry as far as the modern West is concerned. Pliny Earl, part 2. Born in 1809. He was a physician, psychiatrist, and poet. He was the son of the inventor Pliny Earl of the Earl family. Maybe he was the one that's more popular. And Pliny was also born in Massachusetts, Leicester, Massachusetts. And he does not look nothing like me or anybody else melanated also. Let's see, number 7. I think we're on number 7. I think. T.K. Kirkbride. T.K. Kirkbride, another one of the original 13 members. This is his picture. I think he was the one we already looked at. He looks like the same person. Thomas Story Kirkbride. Okay, we already did Thomas already. Okay. William H. Awl, A-W-L, born in 1799. He was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He don't look nothing like me neither. Let's keep going. I don't think they have pictures of the rest. You have F.T. Stribling of Virginia, John M. Galtz of the Eastern Lunatic Asylum in Williamsburg, Virginia. He's probably from Virginia, possibly, I don't know. Nehemiah Cutter of a private institution of Pepperell, Massachusetts, probably from Massachusetts. Samuel White of a private institution of Hudson, New York. I don't know where he's from. All 4 of those, I can guarantee you, and I'm 99.9% sure that they also do not look like me or anybody else you might know that's melanated. Excuse me. And I think we'll move on from that. I really wanted to hone in on these 13 in particular, because that's precisely what I mean when I'm talking about the origins of these things, the origins of classifications of people, groupings of people, and identifying, disease and placing labels and giving words and stuff like that to define an altered state or a different order of the mind. How they might call it a disorder. Not might, they do call it. They call it a disorder, a mood disorder. But it's a different order of the mind if you do your research and you understand that these altered states and different orders of the mind don't look the same across the world. In some places they do, in some places they don't. All right. So here you have 13 individuals that are creating this organization in 1844 at a meeting, and that's not the beginning, but that's part of the beginning of the coalescing of bringing this all together so that they can basically put a label on somebody. It really ties into the perspective and the fact or non-fact that mental illness isn't real for black people. Maybe. Let's go to let's go to this. No, excuse me. Let's go here first. I want to take it to the medical 203, I believe. The medical 203. So you have that's 1844, okay? Maybe we should creep up a little bit. Let's go to IC. Let's go to that instead. Yeah. So the International Classification of Diseases, all right? Let's just give a little short description of what that is. It's a globally used medical classification used in epidemiology, health management, and for clinical purposes. The ICD is maintained by the WHO, World Health Organization, which is the directing and coordinating authority for health within the United Nations system. All right, let's go down a little bit. That's who the ICD is. 1860, during the International Statistical Congress held in London, Florence Nightingale made a proposal that was to result in the development of the first model of systematic collection of hospital data. All right, that's 1860. So you have 1844, the original 13. You have 1860, during the International Statistical Congress held in London, Florence Nightingale. She made a proposal that was to result in the development of the first model of systematic collection of hospital data. In 1893, a French physician named Jacques Bertillon introduced the Bertillon classification of causes of death at a Congress of the International Statistical Institute in Chicago. That's 1893. Who is Florence Nightingale? What does she look like? I know you want to see a picture of her. You want to see the picture? Got to go to YouTube later on. Florence Nightingale looks not like me or you. She's nice, wholesome, on the prairie type of looking chick. Let me go ahead and blow that picture up right quick for you. Yep, there she is. Florence Nightingale, 1860, born in 1820, was an English social reformer, statistician, and founder of modern nursing. Okay, let's go a little further and see where she was born. I wonder where she was born. She was born in Tuscany, born in Florence, Grand Duchy of Tuscany. And Tuscany's in Rome, Italy? Don't judge me. Tuscany is... Where's Tuscany? At the top of... Wait. Hold on a second. We're going to figure this out. Is at the top of Italy. Italian monarchy. Okay. The capital of Florence. Italy, Rome. Okay. That's where Florence Nightingale is from. She died in London, England. I don't know what she was doing over here or why she was over here. But nevertheless, that's 1860. Well, that was in London, so maybe she never was over here. And let's look at Jacques Bertillon. Jacques Bertillon, he might be mixed. He might be a little black. I don't know. He was a French statistician, never mind, and demographer. Born in Paris. So again, added to the original 13. You got two more people that come a little later on that are also a part of the creation and the development of the nomenclature and classification of these labels and words in its inception and origins in 1860 and 1893. So they're at the helm. They're at the beginning of the ICD, okay? A number of countries adopted Bertillon's system, which was based on the principle of distinguishing between general diseases and those localized to a particular organ and or anatomical site. Let's keep moving. In 1898, it does say it was the original was 44 titles to 161 titles regarding Bertillon system. In 1898, the American Public Health Association recommended that the registrars of Canada, Mexico, and the United States also adopt it. In 1898, the APH, American Public Health Association, recommended that the registrars of Canada, Mexico, and United States also adopt it. The APHA also recommended revising the system every 10 years to ensure the system remained current with medical practice advances. They would do so every 10 years, beginning in 1900, basically. And I think we can stop right there regarding the ICD. Yeah, we can stop right there. So as it pertains to a classification system, you have Bertillon's classification system. You have the original 13 that are also at the inception of these organizations who are putting things together so they can start streamlining things so that we can get these classifications and these labels right, and we can all be on the same sheet of music, be on one page. The ICD is currently the most widely used statistical classification system for diseases in the world. In addition, some countries, including Australia, Canada, and the United States, have developed their own adaptations, of ICD, with more procedure codes for classification of operative or diagnostic procedures. Don't get it misconstrued. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, as I'll read in a minute. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with labeling, with labels and classifications of words regarding what one is dealing with, regarding tribalism, how one sees themselves as it pertains to their identity or the many different compartments of their identity. I'm not taking shots at, the narrative of contributing to one's reality with labels and words and defining them. What my issue is just that in the defining of these words, how come it doesn't look multicultural? And I probably wouldn't even agree with it then, but I might be willing to bend a little bit towards accepting and subscribing to a system in particular if I see a multicultural foundation involved in it. The reason why I say maybe, more so maybe not, is because a lot of times they'll put a multicultural gang of people in front of you and present it as multicultural, but it's leaning towards just one culture, one perspective. That's oftentimes why you see these diagnoses and prognosis and remedies. Oftentimes it's like a one size fits all. It's because it's coming from one mindset. But how do things get distributed and filtered through one mindset for hundreds of mindsets, hundreds of different people of different genetics and cultures? Make it make sense. Okay, the math ain't mathing. I don't agree with that system, I digress. We move on. Original 13, in addition to those two, don't look nothing like us. I think I'm going to close this out. I'll leave it up for now. Let me see if this is worthy of reading. I think I'm going to read it anyways. Let's take it to this early history of classification systems of mental illness. Two more people. I'm gonna add two more people to the list. You got the original 13. You got Florence Nightingale from Tuscany. You got Bertillon. Now we have Kraepelin and Alzheimer. Interesting. By the late 1800s, medical science was making great advances in the understanding of the biological origins of medical illness, especially with the discovery of bacteria as the source of infectious diseases. In that era, German physicians Kraepelin, and Alzheimer, were developing methods to identify neurological causes of diseases in some of their patients and to separate diseases such as dementia from other psychiatric illnesses on the basis of biological indicators. They further advanced the notion that mental illness may have a biological basis and begin to organize a framework of psychiatric disorders based on systematic observation of patterns of illness, including characteristic symptoms, course, and outcomes among patients. Their work, however, was largely ignored by American psychiatry at the time. It's interesting. And I haven't even done the research regarding the origins and the different perspectives regarding other cultures as it pertains to Alzheimer's. Might be interesting. Maybe you should do that. It was not until 1844, we already talked about that psychiatry was first recognized as a medical specialty in the United States by the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane in the original 13. We talked about that, all right? An organization that became, all right, in 1921 became the American Psychiatric Association, all right? So when you think about the APA, 1921, the origins of the original 13, they're at the inception of that, okay? At the time, American institutions all have their own in-house diagnostic systems, generally based on prototypical case studies with application of diagnoses, blah, 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 blah. In about 1940, American psychiatry came to be dominated by psychoanalytic theory, an era that lasted approximately 2 decades. Now, when we start talking about psychoanalytic theory, we know that there are two kingpins that are also at the helm of that. Two more people that don't look nothing like me or you. I'm telling you, man, mental illness isn't real for Black people. Maybe the two people at the helm, the two kingpins in particular. There's a few of them. Two kingpins at the helm of psychoanalytics, early 1900s, is Sigmund Freud, and Edward Bernays. I think I talked about it in other videos, but if you ever get a chance, go watch The Century of Self. There's 4 episodes in The Century of Self. You don't even have to watch all 4. You can just watch the first 2, maybe the third one, but the first two in particular are going to give you a really great window into the spirit and souls of these individuals and how they go about manipulating and programming and mind control, propaganda, aka public relations. And they're not even in that particular documentary, they're not even talking about mental illnesses, but you best believe when it comes to programming and mind control and the manipulation of the mind and the classification of people, you best believe that it transferred from the early 1900s and all that Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud were doing to the 1940s when you start getting the creation of these DSMs. It all runs together. Psychoanalytics, classification systems, media, the medium of media, starting in the early 1900s. It all flows together. We keep on moving. Keep on moving, keep on trucking. So let's go to this right here. Medical 203. Medical 203 is arguably the predecessor of the DSM. DSM-1 starts in like 19 45. DSM-1 is 45. I just gave you all these other classification systems that start 1844, then 1960, then 1898, I think it was, whatever. DSM 1, and I'm gonna give you all my receipts for everywhere I'm looking at all this stuff. DSM 1, excuse me, ICD, 1952. DSM-1 is 1952. Before that, you have the ICD-6. We already talked about the ICD, International Statistical Classification of Diseases. ICD-6, not 1. ICD-6 was 1948. That came before the DSM-1, okay? Then you have the Medical 203, 1945. Then you have the APA Statistical Manual and the AMA Standard, 1917, 1933. Yeesh. You got Bertillon stuff. And what was that? I can't remember. I think that was 1898 as far as Bertillon's concerned. You have the Census Office, AMA and ISI. The initial impetus for developing a classification of mental disorders in the United States was the need to collect statistical information. It's always interesting when they need to collect statistical information on people. There's enough arguments to go around as to why they're doing that. But what makes melanated people so uncomfortable about white people collecting statistical information on us? I'm not going to answer that question. You can figure it out for yourself. The official attempt was the 1840 census, which used a single category, idiocy or insanity. 3 years later, the American Statistical Association made an official protest to the U.S. House of Representatives, stating that the most glaring and remarkable errors are found in the statements respecting nosology, prevalence of insanity, blindness, deafness, and dumbness among the people of this nation, pointing out that in many towns, African Americans were all marked as insane and calling the statistics essentially useless. So ironic that they would be so fair to say that. Why do melanated people again feel so uncomfortable with them collecting statistical information? And don't think that just because someone stepped in and was like, hey, that's kind of jacked up for y'all to label all African Americans as insane. Don't ever get too comfortable and think that you have help on your side all the time. I'm not saying that good people that are not melanated have not stepped in to fight the good fight. What I am saying is that just because someone steps in, it doesn't mean they stop doing it. A lot of times what they do is they just revise it. They revise words. They create laws, and then they break the laws to recreate new laws to position themselves to enslave you and condition you and indoctrinate you another way. They just got all these. That's 1840, 1849 right there. And what comes before that? The distinction from the ICD. Yeah. So, yeah. So, DSM-1. Let's go back to DSM-1. DSM-1 is 1952. But I wanted to read about the predecessor of the DSM-1, which was Medical 203. Medical 203, where was I at on that? Medical 203, a War Department Technical Bulletin. War Department Technical Bulletin. Medical 203 is presented in historical context as the first psychodynamic nomenclature. All right. Nomenclature is basically the classification of things. If you want a broader definition, I'll give you one. I don't mind that. As I may be inaccurate. in my simplifying of that definition. The devising or choosing of names for things, especially in science or other discipline. The body or system of names in a particular field, the classification of labels and stuff like that, all right? Nomenclature. Um, Medical 203 is presented in historical context as the first psychodynamic nomenclature. The history of Medical 203 is presented to show how Medical 203 was adapted to become DSM 1. Medical 203 then is compared and contrasted to DSM 4 to illustrate how changes in the modern DSMs have led to an 800% increase in the number of psychiatric diagnoses. That's the comparison to the DSM 4 to Medical 203. 800% increase in the number of psychiatric diagnoses over the last half century. The role of critical history is emphasized in evaluating those changes and in speculating about the next 50 years of psychiatric nomenclature. We will move on from that. So that's the Medical 203, and again, that was 1948. Or was that 42? 45, sorry. 45. To give a little more in depth, as I want to really just really focus in on that, and another individual who was part of the classification of those words as far as the military is concerned. Let's just run through it right quick. World War II saw the large-scale involvement of U.S. psychiatrists in the selection, processing, assessment, and treatment of soldiers. All right, this is what is bringing it in, all bringing it to a head as far as the DSMs are concerned. This moved the focus away from mental institutions and traditional clinical perspectives. The U.S. I wonder why that. I wonder why that was the case. As I would have thought that mental institutions, asylums, were making quite a bit of money, because when it comes to capitalism, money is usually the foundation of a lot of these things. So I guess they didn't want soldiers to be in mental institutions and asylums for some reason. This moved the focus away from mental institutions and traditional clinical perspectives. The U.S. Armed Forces initially used the standard, but found it lacked appropriate categories for many common conditions that troubled troops. The United States Navy made some minor revisions, but the Army established a much more sweeping revision, abandoning the basic outline of the standard and attempting to express present-day concepts of mental disturbance. All right. Under the direction of James Forrestal, a committee headed by psychiatrist Brigadier General William C. Menninger, with the assistance of the mental hospital service, developed a new classification scheme in 1944 and 1945. Under the direction of James Forrestal and Brigadier General William C. Menninger. I just know you want to know what they look like. Let's see, James Forrestal. James Forrestal was the last cabinet-level United States Secretary of the Navy and the first United States Secretary of Defense. Came from a very strict middle-class Irish Catholic family. He was born. Where was he born? Born in Matawan, New York. Sounds very indigenous of a name. They're native. Born in Matawan, New York. Son of an Irish immigrant. No. The answer to your question is no. He looks nothing like us. Picture. We can blow that up right quick. That's James Forrestal. He's not melanated. He's not African. He's not indigenous American. He's not us. Let's go to William Menninger. Brigadier William C. Menninger. Menninger, another person at the head of the classification system regarding the predecessor to the DSMs. Co-founder with his brother Carl and his father of the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas, an internationally known center for treatment of behavioral disorders. Born in 1899, born in Topeka, Kansas. Let's blow up his picture. The son of Florence Vesta and Charles Frederick Menninger. His father, Charles Frederick, was a physician also, who co founded the Menninger Foundation, born in 1862. He was born in Indiana. His father also looks nothing like us. Let's blow up a picture of William Menninger. Let's see what he looks like. He looks like a brigadier general. He looks insane himself. Okay, let's move on. I know you're like, that's not necessary. It is necessary. Let me tell you why it's necessary. What did Jay-Z say? I tell the truth when I get nervous. I'm not nervous, though. I think it's interesting that, people have the audacity to make a classification system about mental illnesses and don't even like take a look at, other radical what we would consider radical perspectives of, the origins of these behaviors for a lot of tribes and cultures of people. For example, why is colonialism not a label? Why is that not a mental illness in any of these nomenclatures, any of these classification systems? You don't see colonialism, you don't see capitalism, you don't see, what's the word for pillaging and taking people from their land? What's the word for taking land away from people? What's the label for redlining? What's the label? What's the label for all these things? So they create these labels and tell you what's wrong with you, but they don't give you other words for what might be wrong with you based upon what they did, whoever they are, these people, these white people, these European people. They just say you're crazy, you're schizophrenic, you're depressed. And they give you these surface perspectives. And just to be clear, that's important too. That's important. It's highly critical, highly important also to tackle these surface elements of why you may be going through what you're going through. All right. But I think it's funny. When you have somebody like Sigmund Freud who points at your mother and says, your mother this, your mother that. And it's like, yeah, but what about what came before the mother, though? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's deflection. It's deflection at its best. And I think colonial deflection, European deflection should also be a mental illness label in every edition of DSM or the ICD. When y'all gonna put those words in there? Maybe it's in there. I don't know. Maybe they put it in there. It should be in there though if it's not. But that's William Menninger, and again, he's part of the forefront of the Medical 203, which is one of the first predecessors, right before the DSM. We'll keep on moving on. I think we've covered enough of that. Where are we at on time? We're at 48 minutes. I like to do no more than an hour, so let's move on from that. That was Medical 203. We did the association in the original 13. Let's move on from them. Might be wrapping this up. We did Florence Nightingale. My dog is so wanting to be in this room. I don't know if y'all can hear him knocking up against the door. I'll read this right quick as we kind of bring things to an end. A rich European tradition. The classification of psychiatric illness began with the ancients. Okay, that's what I was getting to as far as me explaining that. I don't see anything wrong with a classification system. One of the very early classification systems, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is coming out of Mesopotamia. Let me go to something right quick. Just bear with me for a second. Don't be looking at all my stuff. Ghost Files, IG, Videos 1, and let me see if I can. Yeah, Avicina. Avicina Canon of Medicine. Avicina Canon of Medicine. Remember that right quick because I'm going to bring up what year that was created. Avicina Canon of Medicine is looks like it's published in 1025. A great classification system. Matter of fact, I would argue that how they go about emulating a nomenclature or a classification system is based upon the ancients, a lot of our ancestors, This canon of medicine is a medicine of 5 books compiled by Muslim Persian physician philosopher Avicenna. Great classification system. You have so many more before that coming out of Mesopotamia and Samaria. You have also the pyramid texts. You have the Book of Hearts. You have Imhotep. Was a great, great, great grand divine physician, as he also, among others, had a grand and enormous classification system. I'm not knocking classification systems. I'm knocking who is developing the classification system. So now someone might be like, well, who was at the forefront, or who was a part of the organization that created those classification systems, and were they multicultural? I don't know. If we're talking about Imhotep and them and Avicenna, what I can say is that a lot of them look more like us than they do. I'm not saying I trust everything that came out of those classification systems also. But what I am saying is that if I'm going to choose to follow a classification system and subscribe to different elements and variables within a classification system, I'm probably looking for leaning towards people or a person that looks like me. Not because I trust everybody, but because I trust more myself and maybe more my own people. I'd rather learn from my own people. The classification of psychiatric illness began with the ancients and accelerated forward with the European nosologists of the 19th century. As I just covered, all these nosology, all these nomenclatures and classification systems starting in 1844, moving up to 1860, 1898, 1945, 1948, all these different, that. Okay, you got it. There were 2 rival systems of classification: the system-based or symptomatological, and the causation-based okay, and the causation-based or somatoetiological. The latter, of course, is preferable, as nosology in the rest of medicine is based on causation, and a number of different diseases may share some of the same symptoms. A number of different diseases may share some of the same symptoms. Essentially how they call it diseases, but what about a number of different altered states? A different of perspectives of altered states and unique orders of the mind share same behaviors. All right. A number of different altered states as it pertains to different tribes and cultures around the world have similar symptoms, and they don't call it a disease or an illness. All right. Yet over the years, causation-based classifications have had a poor track record in psychiatry because the causes of most disorders are unknown. And when they become known, as with, I don't know what that says. And when they come known, they are abducted from psychiatry and banished into the diagnoses warehouse of other medical specialties. Apparently, my dog is telling me I need to wrap this up. I'll read this last part, though, and then I'll wrap it up. The great European Nosological tradition was, therefore, primarily symptom based. The French dominated the field in the first half of the 19th century. Well known to specialists in the history of psychiatry are such names as Philippe Pinel, who I kind of dig actually. He was one of the first people in this era who was reintroducing other perspectives as it pertains to mental health and how to get better, for lack of words. Sunlight, nature, diet, exercise. Felipe Pinel, look him up, Pinel, who in 1809 ventured the first modern classification, or Etienne Esquirol, who from 1816 differentiated delusional disorders, monomania, from the mix. Edinburgh psychiatrist David Sky, for example, based his nosology or classification system largely on disorders he attributed to the organs of reproduction. However, the European tradition, diagnoses was important, even though most psychiatric illnesses were entirely untreatable except through Malou therapies emphasizing diet, rest, exercise, and prolonged applications of spa. One asylum in Venice required patients to wear different colors. Depending on their diagnosis, those with mania wore red, melancholy green, delusional disorder deep blue. Interesting. However, I'm going to read that sentence one more time. However, in the European tradition, diagnosis was important, even though most psychiatric illnesses were entirely untreatable, except through Malou therapies, emphasizing diet, rest, exercise, and prolonged applications of spa water. Mm, I just think that's interesting. Malou definition. The Malou is person's social environment, social setting environment. And let's go back to what I was reading. Social environment therapies, Malou therapy, social environment setting of therapies. I'm confused why I'm saying it's entirely untreatable except. So is it entirely untreatable? Maybe that was in reference to management and maintenance. I don't know. I think untreatable is subjective for sure. I think there's this thing called management and maintenance, when you've gone through something as extreme as far as the afflictions that come along with what they label as mental illnesses. Um, I don't think that necessarily makes it an illness. I think that management and maintenance of the mind and the spirit and the body is something that should be a lifestyle. It should be of permanence, right, throughout your entire journey. We're not taught these things often or at all, but nevertheless, it doesn't make it an illness. I think we're about to stop. Let me go. IG might cut off in a second. Um, yeah, I think we'll stop right there. Melancholia was not, of course, the specific creation of the Germans and went back to the ancients. It did. Yet this sturdy diagnostic term had persisted over the ages because it corresponded to profound sadness, anhedonia, and psychomotor changes, stupor, or anxious agitation that ran like a red thread through the history of psychiatric illness. That is true. Catatonia was a term coined in 1874 by German psychiatrist Karl Kalbum. Hebephrenia was named in 1871 by Kalbum's associate Ewald Hecker for psychosis of adolescent origin, which involves avolitional syndromes plus blunting of effect. It's or as I always say, the rabbit hole runs deep per the usual. There's so much information regarding, again, how they streamline this into this current classification system that we call the DSMs or the ICD. But you can see all these different phases, again, starting in the 1800s that lead up to the DSMs. My point, getting back to the principle as we, pretty much begin to shut this down. My point is that in this whole, let's just start at 1844, right? 1844 to 1952, which is the inception of the first DSM, DSM-1. 1844, 1952. Nobody. Maybe there's one melanated individual in there somewhere. I swear, if I find him or her, I'm going to let you know. I'll be the first to let you know. But you don't see it. And sadly, even if I do find one or two, it doesn't make up for the enormous amount of people that have contributed to the modern Western classification of diseases as it pertains to quote unquote mental illnesses. None of them look like us. None of these words look like words that we would create from an indigenous point of view, from an indigenous American point of view, or an indigenous African point of view. These words don't even look like what we would call it. When it comes to these things, as I close out with Melanoma Somé, melanoma would probably liken these quote-unquote diseases to a common cold. Why is it called mental illness, but why is it not called an upset mind? Why is it not called a mental cold, right? Why is it not called a mental sprain? All these things which endure a certain amount of pain and in-depth feeling of sort. But it's not an illness. It's not this thing that's like a death certificate that you're given. A sprain, an upset stomach, a cold are all temporary things that last a short period of time. Now, what they label as a mental illness regarding an altered state, or as they call it, a mood disorder, it can last for a while. But I don't believe it's permanent for everybody. And if it is permanent, I believe it's manageable in a healthy way that doesn't necessarily make it an illness. My conclusion is not to say whether it is or not real. That's up for you to say. As I may give my response to that at some point in time throughout my journey. You know what I'm saying? Because I do have a perspective on whether or not it's real or not for real. Again, this is just to open up your mind to see it from different perspectives. Nevertheless, mental illness just isn't real for Black people. Maybe. That's going to conclude this session. This is episode 4. It's on YouTube if you want to see the playback and all the pictures and videos and stuff like that. Don't forget to check out the podcast Normal LOL. I might actually put this on Normal. I might put this on Normal LOL, the audio version of this. We will see. But check that out. Check out the website, Normal LOL, as that is a blog that I haven't done anything with in a long time. But there's good stuff on there, especially if you've been dealing with an altered state that they label as depersonalization or derealization or dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, panic attacks, among many things. It's a great blog website, all right? Email me, elricoramon@hotmail.com. If you're not watching me live on IG, then you who are listening to it on YouTube, you can follow my IG at Elrico Ramon Worlds. And if you like my lectures, as I do consider myself a professor of sorts, Elrico Ramon, $, Elrico Ramon. Just drop me $1. Something. Drop me $1. I like to buy candy sometimes. It's high quality candy, which means I would need more than $1. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Mental Illness Isn't Real for Black People. I hope you learned something. And again, this is not for you to accept my truth. This is for you to create your own truth and lead by your own example and show yourself approved. All right. Peace and light, y'all. All right. I will stop this recording now. Boom.